Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable followers and supporters of Iblis Manifestations. Welcome to a new episode of the podcast. I know this comes at a little bit of a delay. I've had a little bit of a time off from doing the podcast, only for a few weeks, of course, but it's great to be back. And on this week's episode, I have none other than my good friend, Mr. Tom Collings from Devastator on the show. They recently performed a Bloodstock festival, and for anyone who saw them, you know that they fucking kick serious ass. So I thought now would be a great time to have Tom on the show representing the band and talking about what they do. So yeah, they're a speed thrash black metal band. You know, I think it's down the alleyway of a lot of the people who listen to the show. Obviously, this is not exclusively a music podcast, but you know, we talked about a lot of music related stuff, a lot of live stuff, and the general things that come in the territory of Iblis Manifestations. So before I go into that, as always, thank you all for listening to the podcast. I appreciate you being here. I have quite a lot of guests booked in to be appearing on the show now. So you're going to be seeing a lot of very interesting episodes coming up after this one. And I potentially might even be doing a separate series within the podcast, but I will get onto that more in the future. So for now, please allow me to welcome my good friend, Mr. Tom Collings, to Iblis Manifestations. How's it going, Tom? Welcome to Iblis Manifestations, finally.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, I think, I don't know if anyone's picked up on this yet, but I think you're officially the very first famous cocktail to be making an appearance on the podcast so far. So, how'd you feel about that?
Yes. Honored to be the very first famous cocktail.
Great. Obviously, I'm joking, but for anyone who didn't pick up on the reference, Tom Collins is a very famous cocktail. I don't know why the fuck I know that, considering that I don't drink anymore, but obviously, you know, I know. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm sure everyone else is probably thinking the same thing, but how are you feeling now after coming down from the whole Bloodstock experience and that whole thing?
It's still up there. It hasn't stopped because we keep seeing footage and an influx on our social media. There's been quite a rise. We've seen that we were considered find of the weekend, right? People took a chance not going to watch Violence and coming to see us instead, and a lot of them stayed. So you know, it's not changed. It's still, you know, it's still very surreal, but it's awesome. It's absolutely fantastic.
I mean, that was only like just what 10 days ago from now, 9 days, 10 days. It's not been very long since.
I think it's hard to come down from something like that, especially when you go into it not knowing what to expect.
Sure. I mean, in a sense, I would probably imagine that was probably the biggest show that you guys have played so far, right?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is absolutely the biggest show we've played.
And in a sense as well, I think, yeah, sure. Well, hopefully it's not going to stay that way. But at the same time, I think that in a sense, at least from being there and watching it, it seemed to me that everything was just perfect. Like everything seemed to go right, at least from the audience perspective. Everything just seemed to go smoothly. I mean, the only thing that wasn't so smooth was the fucking weather, because, you know, it felt like we were inside of Allah's fucking anus burning in the pits of hell. But besides that, it was actually pretty fucking, you know, like the crowd response, like you said, a lot of people came up and they checked out the show, and it seemed to have about as good of a feedback as I think anyone can get in that stage over there.
Absolutely. Yeah, the heat thing, wasn't easy, but we experienced 3 days of that heat prior to that show. I got to say, when I came off the stage, I almost forgot where I was. It was
Mm.
that hot. The sudden, all the adrenaline left as soon as I walked down those stairs, and the heat came over me very quickly. So it took a little bit of time to pack to get the gear out from the bay. I was trying to push stuff, going, oh fuck.
How did you find the sound on there? Because I remember, obviously, I played that same stage with Trivax back in 2018, and then I
Mhm.
came back the next year and did my very last show with Master Skull on vocals in
Yeah.
2019. And I remember that, obviously, because you have such little time to do changeovers, and if you've never played a stage like that before, when you first kick in and start, the sound is a little bit fucking unexpected. I'm just wondering if you found it to be the same thing or not, or like how was the sound for you?
I didn't start thinking about the sound until we got to about the second song. I was trying to get through the first song, and it didn't. Nothing felt off. There was a lot of. I mean, they don't give you, for those who aren't aware, they don't really give you a monitor mix. You basically you get yourself in your monitors depending on what you do. So I got a shit ton of bass and my vocals in there. So I didn't quite hear the guitars, or a couple of times I had to look over at Chris and Richard just to see if make sure we were in the right place. But I couldn't complain for such a, like you said, for such a quick changeover and a quick turnaround between bands. The sound to me still sounded huge on the stage, and from what I understand, it sounded huge off the stage. So, I think the sound was great, in my opinion.
That's cool. That's great. Yeah, it sounded out the front. It was a pretty, it filled the room. It was really good. I think the reason why I mentioned that is because I remember that when we were doing it, literally as soon as we kicked into the first note, and as soon as I started doing vocals, I was like, "Oh, okay, so I am only hearing myself then, basically."
Yeah.
and we all just have to guesswork like where we are. But then everyone out of the front was saying like, "Wow, that's the biggest I've ever heard you sound." So it was like a really
Mm.
weird kind of a fucking dilemma. But sometimes, even if it is shit, which thankfully in your case it wasn't, even if the sound is shit, I always say just go along with it. Because perception's reality. If the crowd see
Yeah,
you getting
exactly.
flustered, then that takes away from the enjoyment of the show, I think, even if you do
Yeah.
have a shitty sound on stage.
You never
So
try to make it look like you've made a mistake. Like, always make it look like it's intentional.
yeah, that too. Definitely. Well, listen, it was really good to see you guys. It was good to actually see you on a stage like that. Obviously, I mean, we go back. I think the very first time we actually shared the stage together was back in, I'm gonna say October 2018. And correct me if I might be wrong on that, although I'm usually pretty good with dates. I think it was
Was that in
October 2.
York?
I think it was at the Hairy Dog in Derby. I think it was one
Oh,
of
you
those
mean you mean
events
in yeah, you mean in this band?
in Devastator. Yeah, that's right. Oh,
Yeah,
you're
in
you're
Devastator. Yeah,
going
yeah,
you're
yeah.
going even before that. That's right. I
I'm yeah,
know.
I'm going even further than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
What was
you're
the name
right.
of that band again? You had with Elliot
Repulsive.
Repulsive. That's right. What happened to that?
Oh, you there? Still there?
Yeah. I'm saying like what
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happened to
Sorry,
that
sorry.
band?
What happened? The drummer went and joined. I can say it now because he's not in the band anymore. But the drummer went and joined Dragged into Sunlight, and went on tour. Went on that Mayhem tour, that double European leg. And when he came back from that, he decided that he had to do drag full time, and there was no. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a dick when I say this, but there didn't seem to be any ambition to replace him.
Mm.
There was a intense discussion between the remaining members, and no one. I got outvoted basically. I wanted to replace Stephen because I thought what we had at the time was really good, and we had a fair bit of momentum. We were writing a first album, and then they just went, "No, I don't want to do it." That mixed with people apparently feeling burnt out, just it just fell through after that. So, and I would have. I would have sat there and like gone, okay, I'll just get new members and I'll do it myself with Elliot, I guess. Um, but even then, it was like I can't. I wasn't motivated enough to do it because I felt quite bitter at the time, and probably I felt bitter towards death metal as well. I didn't really like where death metal was going. Um, death metal seemed to become a lot less about death and more about other subjects, and everything lost its kind of grisliness and grimness. So I just kind of, I think I got burnt out from death metal as well. But at the time, I was doing this band as a kind of side project, so it gave me more time to focus on this.
Sure, yeah, because I think from the moment Repulsive kind of went away, then you pretty much started this one. Like Devastator pretty much seemed to come way up like out of nowhere, and then that seemed to
Yeah.
be like full throttle with that. It's
Mm.
interesting the dynamic that you explain about the drummer, though. Do you think it might have been maybe a little bit of a kick in the teeth as well? That, oh wow, this guy's now going and playing with all these bands. If we're not getting the opportunity here, and
Mm.
if that kind of thing isn't here, then maybe it's just not as much worth it to put time and effort into this. Do you think that could have been maybe a little bit of the psychological dynamic there?
Maybe I don't know what the true feelings for the other members of that band were when they decided that they didn't want to replace Stephen. We talked about it in depth, and a lot of it was burnout. They all seem to be very kind of fed up, I guess. I don't think there's no bad blood or anything between any of us actually, but I just don't think that they wanted to keep it going anymore. And then even then, one of the members of that band hasn't played music since.
I
He
see.
stopped playing in bands, so I guess he really was burnt out because he didn't want to go do it again. I spoke to him recently after the Newcastle came to see us, and he's still not in a band. He's like now he's just happy doing his thing.
See, I think the thing is a lot of times, you got to look at it like this. What we do, whether it's in death metal, black metal, it's all a very niche thing to even be a fan of it, right?
Mm,
Like it's already a Marmite thing. So a
mm,
very small percentage of population even end up listening to this kind of music. Now, an even smaller percentage of those people end up actually wanting to play it. And obviously you have a lot of people who are fans of this music are also musicians, but then to actually go and form bands and then commit to it in such a way, it's one of them things. Not everyone wants to do that. And the thing is as well, when people want to do it, so you're really like narrowing down this whole thing, when people do actually want to do it, a lot of times they want to do it for the wrong reasons. And very, very few people, I think, then approach this with the right way, because a lot of times, like this whole burnout thing that you're mentioning, and I don't mean this in a sort of like in a condescending way by any means,
yeah.
but I don't think that the band was even around for a very long time at the time, was it? I think it was
No,
only
it
like
wasn't.
a few years, maybe.
Yeah, this is why I didn't really believe the burnout thing because there was so much more potential and there's so much more time to cover. Like, if it had been going as long as my current band has been going, and as long as that, and they got a little bit of burnout, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. But the way that band used to play shows compared to the way this one plays, which is far more consistent, I just never really saw where this burnout stuff was coming from. But that's on them. They didn't want to do it anymore. That's up to them.
Well, this is exactly what I'm saying. And again, I'm not putting words into anyone else's mouths or anything like that. I'm not speaking on their behalf. But generally speaking, I mean, I have been in the UK for just coming up to 11 years now. Okay. And
Hmm.
in this time, I have seen so many fucking bands come and go. It's ridiculous. Like I would have never imagined that. I've seen bands that got formed after we started Trivax in the UK, or restarted it, if you will, and they've broken up whilst we are still going. So
Yeah.
and that's kind of interesting to me because I think it comes down to the reason thing. Like you really have to fucking love this to want to do it. Because
Absolutely.
if you've got that mindset of, oh, I'll do a few shows and then maybe we'll get really famous. Maybe one promoter or a manager will pick us up at a pub. It's like, no, listen, if you're gonna think like that, you're gonna really let yourself down, and you're gonna have a lot of very bitter disappointments, so I think that's what sets a lot of us apart, is that obviously with yourself, you wanted to do this, regardless of any of that. Obviously, it's not that
Mm.
you don't want to get hurt, you do want to get hurt, but at the same time, um getting I don't know, not getting acknowledged isn't exactly gonna make you stop doing what the fuck you're doing. It's just gonna make you do it fucking louder, so people
Yeah,
can fucking hear what's going on. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's, at least I feel, the way I look at it as well. I assume you're more of the same mindset as well, looking at how things
yeah,
have now turned out with Devastator.
yeah. It's a motivator. That's the thing. Like you said, it's very niche. It's a very niche sub genres of music, and uh, you've got to want to do it. If you don't want to do it, then you completely, you're wasting your time. Like you won't put 110 and more in if you don't actually want to do it. And the thing is with this band is that we know, with this Devastator, we know that it can be quite a niche thing. Black thrash, we still get the thrash stuff in, and obviously a little bit of that kind of rock and roll edge that comes from the Motorhead side of things. But at the same time, it's still very niche. I'm sure, like, a lot of people will be. You'll always get the one person who goes like, "Oh, well, have you ever tried putting some clean vocals in?" Something like that, and like to
Oh,
make it a bit more accessible or contemporary or whatever. Make it more melodic or whatever people tend to say. And the thing is, like, well, we wouldn't be being very true if we were putting things in that other people asked us to do, because it comes from us. It's a natural extension of ourselves. So, you have to want to be able to do it to even be motivated. And whether you get big or whether you garner a bit of success from it or not, you should feel content in yourself that you did it. You're doing it your way, and it's what you want to do. You're not being told what to do in order to get somewhere. Like, that's the way I look at it. And we all love a bit of success and a bit of attention and everything. And I'm very, very, very grateful that we have started getting that success and the attention. And I'm glad that other people enjoy what we do. But at the same time, what did Motorhead say? They don't write for them. They don't write for the fans. They write for themselves. And if they like it, brilliant. It's a plus.
yeah, absolutely. I think, you know what, that is very, very important, because I think that's pretty much, in my book, that is the only way to do this kind of music, or
Mm,
perhaps actually any, not even just music, but any form of art. I think that's the only way to fucking do it, because if that's not the reason, then why the fuck are you doing? Like, are you just
exactly.
manufacturing things? Like when you're talking about genres and things like that. Okay, let's say you do want to add clean vocals to your music. That's fine, but you
Mm,
should do that
mm.
because that's what you want to do, not because someone else fucking told you to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's like, you look at a lot of people, where they decide or they make choices of what genres they want to do and they want to stick to. And to me personally, I don't really find that very relatable, because I'm like, well, you know, that's all fine, but then it's just a fashion show. You should, to me, I think that you should write music as honestly as humanly possible, and then maybe, by, let's say, accident, you end up being a part of that subgenre, because that's the closest thing that maybe people can relate your music to. But even then,
Mm.
I think that the labels are completely fucking bullshit. It's just an easier way
Yeah, yeah,
to I guess sell it to someone, to try and make someone understand what your band fucking sounds like. But at the end of the
yeah.
day, it should
Basically.
sound like you, and it's a special relationship that you have with that music, and then the relationship you have with everyone else in your band that gets channeled into performing that music. And that's like, you can't always just fucking bind that, like put it underneath genres and just box
Mm.
that fucking thing. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah, it's
it's a lot
limited.
more than that.
It's like limiting yourself as well. Like you say, you should do what you want to do. but don't not do something because you think that it's not this that you currently are.
Yeah.
Like you know, and on the opposite side of that spectrum is that if you start doing things that people tell you to do that don't come across as natural, then you start to sound very clinical and robotic because it won't be honest.
And there's enough of that, like, and this is not a dig by any means of a lot of these festivals, but you sometimes listen to a bunch of bands, like you go through like the playlist of who's playing the festival, and it's like literally half of them, they sound exactly the same. Everything is super polished. It's like everything comes in one ear and then just leaves the other, and there's just nothing that
Yeah,
stands out about it whatsoever. Usually if
yeah,
it stands out, it's because it's fucking shit. It's because they decided to go like too much the other way. It's almost like the Tommy Wiseau approach to music. Like that's the way
yeah,
to stand out, because it's just one of them things. At the end of the day, it's down to taste, and what people like. But I think as artists, you always have maybe a different way of looking at these things, where you're always questioning the legitimacy of something, and whether
yeah.
it's like, okay, what's this here then? You know what I mean? And sometimes as
Yeah,
well, it's okay. It's okay to paint a picture that is about a specific thing. That in itself can still be, I guess, an honest form of expression. You don't have to limit that to exactly personal experiences as such. But I do find that the more soul searching that you have within your own life, the more you can then translate some of that into what's actually going on within the music. And that's probably the part that people relate to. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Is that you've experienced these things and then you channel that through the music. Maybe the song might be about, I don't know, fucking eating babies or something. But I think it's the personal experience behind it, not so much of eating babies, but whatever
yeah.
it is that you've got, that it creates like a focal point that then both you and the audience can sort of connect over, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. I get what you mean. Um, but yeah, you know, I think if something is slightly relatable, and even if the song subjects are on the obscure side, you know, I I don't write about modern day politics or pull any pages from the Book of Mustaine. But if people relate to that, if they're a horror fan or something like that, then that's happy. If they find something in something I've written, then that's absolutely great. That's wonderful, and I hope that they cherish that, because that also makes me feel good as well. That makes me feel good that I've directly influenced someone's life in the smallest way, in the tiniest way. But it's made them happy with my music, and that's enough for me. Like I'm very, very happy with that.
So tell me a little bit about how you actually ended up putting Devastator together, because obviously we were
Hmm.
talking about Repulsive and how that sort of fell apart, and then obviously you turned your focus into Devastator, which obviously now is got a solid foundation, and you guys are just like, you just keep pushing that. So how did that actually start? How did you end up, I don't know, meeting the guys from the band? Because you've pretty much kept the same lineup from the beginning, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Um, under the name Devastator, yeah.
Okay.
But at the time when I was still doing Repulsive, this was happening kind of in the background, and it was basically a different lineup with a different name, and I didn't even have a logo, just had a name. But it was basically get together on the weekends where we weren't busy in our other band and drink beer and play a couple of Sodom covers relatively poorly. Um, and that singer, the original singer, he left. He moved to Wales, moved to Cardiff, I think. And then one of the guitarists left, and then it was three of us. So we decided to, when our respective bands all fell through, which coincidentally all happened kind of at the same time, we decided to change the name and start taking it a bit more seriously because we had more time, and we really wanted to focus with things. And that's when the creative the creativity started to really flow with the early material which we wind up on the demo, and with the name change came that logo um, by Chris. I'm going to butcher his second name. Christopher Jezebel. I don't know. I can never say his second name. Every time I have to spell it, I have to Google him.
Right.
Yeah,
That's always good.
he's done. I think he did Emperor's logo, and he did one of the old Dimmu logos.
Oh yes, okay, yeah, I know the guy. Right.
The Lord of Logos, as he's
Yeah, yeah,
known.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, so he
I
did the
butchered his name there.
Devastator one. Cool. I
He
do
did the
actually like
Devastator
your
logo.
logo. Yeah, I think it's very suitable for the kind of sound that you've got. It's perfect, actually.
We gave him a couple of things that we wanted. I mean, I think it's quite obvious that Sodom's S is in the middle there.
Yeah.
A little nod to that. But he did a really good job, and we were really happy. And we didn't want to change a thing when he sent us the original sketch he did. We didn't want to change a thing, so we had that done there. So we had the logo. We had the three of us, and we had a bit of time later from rehearsals, maybe about 4 months or so. We played our first show, and that was in Nottingham. And coincidentally, about a couple of days before that first show, the last member to join, Chris, was coming to the show. And a couple of days before, we had a meeting, me and the drummer, because he was talking about reforming his old band with me and the drummer Jack. Me and Jack talked about it. We went, we want to focus on this and Devastator more. So we said, we'll give him an ultimatum. How about you join us? And he didn't even take like half a second to say yes after we said that. He just said yes straight away. And he came to the first show because he hadn't heard any of the stuff. He just said yes. And he watched the show so he could hear the material. And then immediately after, we started rehearsing, and it's been that lineup ever since. And I think that was at some point in 2018, I believe. I want to say 2018, but I could be wrong. I think Jack will probably know that better than me.
Okay, sure. I think I mean that sounds about right to me. Like I said, I think I met both you and Jack back in October 2018 when we were playing Derby together, and it was one of them shows where it was like the sound was great, the lighting, everything was fantastic. Not a bad lineup either. There was just no motherfucker there.
Yeah. Those shows from that promoter, he disappeared long ago, and no one knows where he is now.
Okay. Actually, you know what? I'm saying that to you now. I think I can just in the corner of my room see the poster for that show. Yeah.
Is it red?
Yeah.
I
You
did
designed that,
one.
didn't you? Yeah.
I
I've got it
did
right
that
here.
one.
I've got it right here. I've got a pretty expansive like poster collection of all the events that we've played going way fucking back to like 2012, 2013, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff here, you know. There's some posters here, you know, where I look really fat on the pictures, you know. So that's how far back that goes. But yeah, completely irrelevant. But yeah, so that was good, man. But I remember like watching you guys back then, and then you played with us again when we played at the Unicorn in London when that was still open on the 23rd of November 2018. I think you guys opened the show on that one. And
I want to say that was our first London show as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think that was our first London show.
Right. See, Trivax takes everyone around, man. You know, we treat all the No, I think that was actually, this is what I was going to say, that when I was watching you guys at that show, I was like, oh, cool. There's finally UK band actually doing a style I like, you know. And then I think you did the Countess Bathory cover as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, cool. You know, finally, we've got, there's just finally a band I can fucking like relate to, at least in terms of like what they're doing and stuff. Obviously, a few other great bands and stuff, but generally speaking, you know, with the up and coming stuff, it's not always stuff that at least I personally relate to. You know, there's usually like a lot of like fucking slam death metal and stuff, which is all fine, I guess. But you know, but I like my Motorhead. You know, I like the Sodom, so I think it kind of makes sense.
Primitive as it gets, without going to like obscure war metal.
Sure, yeah. It's just borderline autistic. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
I'm on that. I'm on that as a quote.
Yes. Yeah, I want to see that from now. It's just like Devastator, borderline autistic.
Right next to Ben from Orange Goblin's quote would be yours. Okay,
Yeah.
devastated, borderline autistic.
No, but obviously, like, you guys sound pretty good, and one of the things that I do actually really like about your band is sort of the bond that you seem to have between the four of you. I think that's I don't know how much you realize this yourself, but that's a rare thing to actually see in bands, because a lot of times everyone's just fucking hired guns, or everyone's just like kind of playing together. Not everyone's kind of in on the same thing. But from watching you guys and kind of observing not just how you play on stage, but also how you even hang around the VIP of Bloodstock, I can see that, and I can see that there's a real band there. It's not just people playing music. It's not just a dictatorship or whatever. Obviously, all of those things can be fine and they can work, but there's something special about having a real band, and I'm not sure. Uh, I don't know. At least that's from the outside perspective. I don't know. I'm sure that's probably quite prevalent to yourself, I would presume. So just tell me a little bit about how much does your relationship with the rest of the guys impact your dedication to the band and your motivation to actually want to keep pushing through, if you will.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we're friends. We were friends before this, and I've said this a few times to sober and drunk, that I don't think I can imagine doing this band with any of the three guys, because I think what we put out musically is sort of a testament to our to how close we are. We know how each member ticks when they write. We know when someone individually writes, they're thinking in their style. So, I think in Jack's drum style. I'll try to think in Rich's riffing style. I'll try to think in Chris's riffing style.
Cool.
And we bounce off each other and complement each other quite well musically. And I think that, obviously, it kind of goes back to what we said earlier. You have to enjoy it. And we enjoy playing and making music with each other so much, and I guess that really does come off on the stage in that kind of camaraderie. But it's been all of this stuff's been a very close friendship. I mean, Jack and Chris, guitarist and drummer, they were in another band and they've been friends for years, absolute years. Like I met them both, and then soon after I met Richard through this band, and then because he's the youngest, we kind of started taking him out and doing things before he went sober as well. But
Sober?
yeah, he doesn't drink anymore.
Is that the
you
same
don't
for
have
you as
to.
well? Because you
No,
said,
no.
oh, okay.
I was in referencing to you not drinking.
Oh, okay, sure. I understand what you're saying.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but
cool.
he he stopped. But that you don't have to drink to have a good time. And we, it's hard to describe, because when you've been friends with people for so long, even before you started doing music, it actually feels to me a little bit more special than doing it with someone random, or making music, playing music with hired guns, like you said.
Sounds like sex.
I've just realised what that started to sound like.
But I think
have
it
to say,
is that. I think it's a very similar dynamic.
I
Like, all
think
jokes
I
aside.
think once again to go back to the Kings, I think it was Lemmy who said that being in a band is the closest you can be with someone without having sex with them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, fucking holy shit, man. I've probably, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about this paragraph before I say it out loud and make sure it doesn't sound wrong. But yeah, I feel that way because Matt Croton, the drummer in Trivax. I mean, him and we've been
Yeah,
playing together for over 10 years now.
yeah.
And Sully, we've been playing together for what, 4.5, nearly 5 years. Although everyone assumes that we've known each other for 20 years, but we may as well have done. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And I do personally consider these guys like closest to me. There's obviously like your sort of romantic partners and things like that. That has its place too, absolutely. But there's just something about sort of the relationship you got with the guys in the band. It's one of them. It's I think the positives sort of they have a strength to them that you don't really get elsewhere. Like you don't
Yeah.
really get that same kind of thing with like family and stuff like that. It's very unique.
Mm.
I don't think many people actually get to experience these kind of relationships with other people who are in family or like romantic partners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because together you move other people. So not only you
Mm.
move each other, but you move other people as a unit, and that's I think a very interesting thing that even happens. There's like I feel like there's like a very ancient primal aspect of humanity that occurs when you're in a band. Yes, we're playing music and you got electric guitars and all this and that and the lyrics and the themes, but I feel like it's way more primitive than that. That's how you get these like really interesting energies that get evoked when you're playing this kind of music.
Yeah.
That just sends you places that you would never fucking go otherwise. You know.
Yeah. I think there's I'm trying to think of any other word to use other than magic, but I guess I'll say it. I think there is a kind of a certain magic that comes with being creative with someone because it does bring you that a little bit closer, and especially when you go through all of the cycle of learning it, playing it live, recording it, putting it out there, and then you see people's reactions to it. That's something you did together. That's amazing. That's wonderful, and it brings you like weirdly, not weird, but like it's strange because it brings you closer, and it
Yeah.
it it reinforces the bond that you already had, especially if you're already playing music with your friends. Um, it's very hard to describe, but yeah, I totally get what you mean. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it is that. I mean, I guess there's that exists within other things as well, because to me, the whole thing of being in a band and performing to a group of people it's a very masculine thing, and by that, I don't mean that it is or should be deprived of female participants. That's not what
Yeah.
I mean at all. But what I mean is that the act in itself, it's kind of it's a very Dionysian type of art form, which is
Mm.
basically like having a giant phallus just fucking pointing at the fucking sky, and it's like that's kind of what being in a band is like to me, because you have that sort of experience, and this is a very alpha thing. Being on stage, that's you're embracing the alpha aspect of yourself. That's how you command the
Mm.
crowd. You don't go on stage and say, oh, hi everyone, thanks for coming to the show. That shit's not gonna fucking fly. You know what I mean?
They'll
So
see
you
they'll
have
see
to.
straight through you.
Exactly, yeah. So you have to fucking take command of the stage and do your thing and fucking do it right. But to me, I think there's that. It's kind of like, I mean, I hate football, but it's kind of like when you watch a football team and then when they score, and then the whole
Mm.
fucking stadium pops, and then
Yeah.
you see those interesting bonding moments in between the football players, where I think
Yeah.
in that moment maybe it's not so much about how much money they're making, which is a fucking lot, but I
Yes.
think it is that human element. That's the part I'm fascinated by, which the more and more I think about it, I feel like being in a band is one of the best ways you could actually ever achieve that, and there's so much that goes into it before you even reach a level where that's a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, and I think to the point of what I was talking about, you and the rest of the guys, I think that there definitely seems to be something special happening there. And I think that uh, if you guys keep at it, there will be good things on the way. You just need to stop smiling on stage as much during your sound check. That's all.
Oh, it's very hard. It's very hard to do, especially in that situation where you saw
I'm
that
kidding,
because
man.
you know the people, I could not smile at that point. It's been pointed out a couple of times now by close family and friends who were there and saw it and went, you just couldn't wipe that smile off your face for a second, could you? Because it was, to see that amount of people, that many people, like the football thing, chanting your band's name in almost like a football chant, which was
Sure,
quite,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
never happened before. That's never happened before to that scale. So it's
all
I'll
right, cool.
proudly wear that cheesy grin.
Yeah, I understand that. There's nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's, of course, that's what you want to hear. It's not to say it's not from the point of view of like you're too cool for it, but it's
Hmm.
almost like I don't know how to say it. It's fine, man. I'm just fucking pulling your leg in front of you.
I know.
That's all. All right, cool. Well, what's gonna be your plans for the band coming up? You working on a new album now or something?
Yeah. We're still, we're still in the rehearsal stages. We've got about another 8 songs to go through, so it's going to be a while yet. But with working closely with management, a time scale's been set out for when we've got to be in the studio. So we're getting there. We've got bits and pieces put together of other songs, but the ones that we've been playing recently during some of these shows are the ones that are the most concrete. And I always feel that we had a bit of a benefit with the first album because all of that stuff was fresh and it was constantly played live, constantly refined before it was recorded. With this stuff coming up, we won't exactly have that pleasure because we're not going to be able to play a whole new album live and not play the other stuff. So, some stuff won't get any attention until it's recorded and released. We're trying to fine tune everything. We're not trying to put any duff material, any filler material in. We want every song to have its own personality and its own special thing to it. I can't really put a date on when it would possibly be out, but we're still working through it. We got a title, I'll give you that. I'm not telling you what it is. But
I mean,
yeah,
you can drop the title if you want. Sure, go for it.
I'm not dropping the title. The only hint I'll give you is that it's it's alpha it's kind of alphabetized if you think about the first album.
Okay, so it starts with C, right?
There you go. There's your hint.
Okay.
Uh, so that's as good as you'll get until all the I guess all the cryptic stuff starts happening again.
So your next album's
But
gonna be called Cons on Tour 2023, right?
yeah, why not? Damn it, he's got it. He's rumbled us.
No, but yeah, I mean,
But
your first one sounded great, man. I remember when you were sending me the demos for it before you guys even fucking released the thing, and I was like, all right,
yeah,
this is sounding cool. And then when you released it, yeah, it seemed a little gradual at first, but once it kind of hooked, it seemed that you were
mm,
all of a sudden playing like a million fucking shows, and there was a lot more attention. And Howling Night, that seemed to do really well as well, which is a really cool track. I don't know if anyone's
mm.
not heard that song or seen the video. I recommend you go check out Devastator's Howling Night on YouTube. It's pretty fucking cool,
Thank
so
you.
yeah, I mean, how did that feel, as that being like your first main effort? And I would presume that that's probably the most amount of attention that any music you've worked on has had um, so far.
Mm,
Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. Personally, for me, yeah.
Yeah. How does that feel?
I'm not sure. It's great. It's wonderful. I was quite happy to have written something that people really like because I definitely feel like Howling does have a certain accessibility to it that comes, I guess, with the catchiness of that riff and the chorus. That's what I get told a lot that it's quite catchy. It's quite an earworm. So I was quite pleased um, that I was able to come up with something that people seem to have stuck in their heads because you could probably be the most technically proficient musician in the world, but if you can't write a catchy lick and a decent chorus that people really hold on to, then I think you're missing something there. Technical ability is fantastic, but you need to be able to put songwriting into it as well. as much as it might not be as fun to do as flashy widdly diddly stuff, you've got to kind of implement some songwriting and maybe take some things from avenues that maybe you wouldn't think you were taking them, but you wouldn't necessarily think you would ever take stuff from. Because I definitely like there's the thing with the accessibility of that song. I still think that it's probably the most accessible track on that album.
Sure. And is that the reason that made you want to decide to actually make a video for it? Because you thought, hey, this is kind of like the Enter Sandman
Yeah,
of the album, so let's try and
yeah,
get it out there.
yeah. I guess so. I can't remember the decision when we decided because we had done videos of sorts for our four favorite songs on the album
Mm-hmm.
collectively, and we didn't want to do a video for Send Them to Hell and Deathslip because those two are individual songs and they're just over 1 minute apiece. They're kind of the punk songs, but
Yeah.
Hail was an important one because that was on the demo, so that was essentially the only re-recording that wound up on Baptized. So that one got done
Right.
first, but we did that video. Howling was the last video, but when we did Hail Death, um, we were obviously confined to the situation with COVID. So me living where I live and them living where they live, I couldn't get to them. I don't drive or anything, so I wasn't able to get to them to actually do a video. So we took live footage. We asked everyone's permission who had posted the live footage, and we spliced it together like this VHS tape that was found in an attic, which Richard all filmed himself in his attic because he had the means to do it. He's really into his video editing and filming, and we did that one. That one did okay, wasn't great, but it's what we could do in that circumstance. And then when we were able to kind of travel and we were able to do Howling, and we got in touch with Stratmill guitarist Chris James, who is a videographer as well. He does a lot of video shoots and photography shoots. And he did the last Shrapnel video. We were talking to the Shrapnel guys a lot during that part with the pandemic, much like we are doing now on Zoom and things. So
Mm-hmm.
we asked him about it. He said, "Yeah, do it." And we organised. We went up to Norwich to go film it, and we filmed it. Got it all done in a day. Came back and he gave us the first edit the early hours of the next day around about 2 o'clock in the morning. Me and Jack watched it, and it was perfect. It was great.
Cool.
Um, Howling was definitely probably picked as the last one. I think we wanted to save that one, you know, because it did feel very kind of rock and rollish. I think that definitely comes from that riff and that chorus as well. So, we had done all the fast songs, with the fast ones. We did the more, I guess, the closest to black metal with Hail Death. We did Worship the Goat and Spiritual Warfare, which was Chris's number because of that kind of more epic heavy metal Iron Maidenish sort of vibe in that song. So I think Howling was the most logical one to do last before we kind of said we're done doing videos for this album now. Otherwise, we'll wind up with a video for every song. Um,
Sure. Do Metallica and just do one for each track. Well, listen, I
yeah,
think that's cool. And whilst you were talking there, you mentioned about the pandemic. How
Mm,
did you personally find that? Because I feel like you went through some changes in that time, and then you seem to come out of the other end of it. I mean, everyone did. So I'm kind
yeah.
of saying this a little bit presumptuously, but how did you feel, going through that whole experience and then now making it to this side, and then now you're playing shows, you're getting to do what the
Yeah.
fuck you wanted to do, So tell me a little bit, like let's dig
Mm.
deep a little bit on the
Well,
transformation, if you will, if there has
yeah,
been any.
I didn't take it very well, as a lot of people I know didn't, because it was such a, you know, I, even my mum and dad said we've never seen anything like this in our lifetime, so let alone mine. Um, we released Baptized during that time as well, and what the kind of sucky thing about that was is that we couldn't we couldn't do anything to support it other than what we were doing with press. We had to
Mhm.
constantly do press, push press, push press, push press, push press. And, you know, the feeling of not being able to give it's like it didn't even get an album release show or anything. It never did. We didn't even do like a posthumous one or something like that. But it sucked, and I dealt with not being able to see everyone because I was going up to Derbyshire every weekend. I was going up there not only just to be with the band, but to see my friends and be in the place where I used to live. Um, and then to all of a sudden have that completely stop. Not that I physically couldn't walk out the door and go, is I couldn't get there because public transport went no, and I don't fancy getting a fine for no reason. So it sucks, but it was horrible. But, there was always the motivation that this will end eventually in some way. Whether it really ended, it's still around today, and people are getting sick. Still getting sick, and I've had it enough times now where I'm just like, oh fuck, here we go again. But
Yeah.
I didn't deal with it very well. I had a few dark evenings, like I guess a lot of people did. I think a few other members of this band did as well. Like some ones who were quite confident, like, I'll be fine. And then, a few months down the line, they're like, okay, actually, I'm not dealing with this very well. But there was always the motivation to know that it will end, and we will come out the other end of it, and we'll go back to playing shows again. My biggest concern was, is there going to be anywhere left to play because they were all shutting down? But personally, it sucked. I hated it, but you soldier on. You go through. As long as you've got something to motivate you to keep you doing it, then and to not give up and go like, oh, all right, well, this sucks. This sucks, and I'll just dwell in not self pity, but kind of like just you can't see any positivity. Can't see the other side. Like you're just concentrating on the shit that's happening now. Whereas it took a couple of times for me to kind of go, right, no, it'll be fine. Move forward, move forward. And eventually that happened because we came back to playing shows again. We actually got to give Baptized the run that we think it deserved. And, I'm happy all that's gone now in the past. I'm happy that, fingers crossed, we don't have to go through anything like that again. Especially from the country that you come from, I think that kind of some of the ways that it made other people feel who weren't used to it, coming from the West, to you may have been like, I've felt this before, I've seen this before. But, it was quite brand new for us to be told by our governing state that you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. Well, why? Because you'll get everyone else sick. I took it seriously because at the time I was working in the medical profession, so I did see a lot of the things come through, which was quite horrifying, and me and my mother both did. But at the same time, there was that shit that's like, oh great, now I'm being told I can't do X, Y, and Z. That sucks. But it was crap. But we came back through. And
you made an interesting point there. Well, for anyone wondering, I never experienced fucking 3-4 months of lockdowns back in where I'm from, but I did indeed experience the thing of, you can't play a show. If you play a show, not only will you get fined, you'll get severe legal punishments because of that, to the physical extent. That part I recognized, and
that's what I was going for.
Yeah, and the way in which I recognized it wasn't so much that, I don't know, it was like a thing of, it's the same old case of a government using your own safety against you. It's, hey, you can't do this because we are keeping you safe. Right. Okay. And it's like that. I relate this to how things were back in Iran, because you could, in a way, you could consider it spiritual safety. You know what I mean? Okay, if you go and play black metal, you're gonna go to hell, so we're gonna kill you for it.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, okay, great. It's
solid logic.
Yeah, but to me, I think it's exactly the same here. And the thing is, as well, it was a terrible event. I mean, I had it fresh out of the lab back in March 2020, and that fucked me up. I still have long-lasting effects from that now, right?
Yeah,
And I'm a relatively pretty healthy person too. I have very healthy habits, and I look after myself, but I still have some of those things there. Um, but the trouble is that whilst it was a terrible event, this terrible event was also getting taken advantage of to its fullest extent. And a big part of that was simply just an exercise of power. Is let's see how far we can push people. Let's see how much we can get away with sucking the power and the control out of them and bringing it to our side. And by our side, I mean that's the government and that's the hierarchy's perspective. And you see now that okay, yeah, it's a shitty virus. It's lost a lot of its strength now. It's nowhere near as bad as it was maybe a couple of years ago, no doubt. I've had it 4 times now, and yeah, it's like the last two I didn't even know I had it, right?
yeah, yeah,
And the thing is here that you look back at things now, and obviously no one could have ever predicted things. None of us knew what was going on, and I think a lot of the fault was generally with those of us who would um sort of come up with a prediction but then claim it as facts, or
mm,
be given a prediction by the government, like how long was it to flatten the curve? 2 weeks or something? And, it's like there's these things that we all get given, and we all just pretended that we knew exactly what the fuck was going on. And obviously, none of us did. However, the saddest part about all of it now, looking back in the last 2.5 years, is the fact that we now know for sure that the lockdowns made very little difference, because I think what was it? There was a statistic somewhere. I might be butchering this, but I think it was something like 0.02% difference in stopping the spread of it, right?
mm,
Because even now, almost every person that you know has already had it anyway, right? How many
yeah.
people have you met now who've never had COVID, or they're just catching it now or something? It's like it's been out there,
None that I
it's
know. Yeah,
yeah,
none that I
exactly.
know.
Like almost everyone's already had it anyway. So all that really did, besides destroy people's fucking businesses and the
Yeah,
control that they had and the financial independence that a lot of people had worked very fucking hard to build for themselves, was also the fucking mental health of so many people that just
mm,
suffered from this. And what happens if people, are just fucking psychotic enough, they're just afraid enough, they're just depressed enough where maybe they won't really harm themselves, maybe they will, but maybe they won't. And then that's the perfect place to have people if you want to control them, because then whatever solution you've got, they'll buy it. Everyone will listen to what you have. By you, I mean the government trying to fucking sell people shit, right?
mm,
And it's like a sheep, you know what I mean? You wave the fucking stick at them, they go, "Oh shit, don't fucking beat me up, motherfucker," and then they move away. It's kind of like that. And I don't mean this in an insulting way, because everyone did what they thought was the right thing to do. But looking back at it now,
mm,
it's very obvious that the whole event was taken advantage of. And I think that, at least for me personally, the lesson is to just remember to be stoic in the future if such events ever arises, and more importantly, be prepared.
yeah.
So there's that. What do you think were some of the lessons that you personally took from like the last 2.5 years, or just this whole experience that we all had?
Uh, well, one of them would definitely be checking on your friends more because you don't know what they're thinking at the time.
Hmm.
You could have spoke to them on the phone and they could have sounded happy as Larry, but one of mine wasn't, and luckily he survived his attempt. And as far as I understand, actually from Bloodstock, which we were just at, he's doing all right. He's good. After I lost a fair bit of contact from him, a mutual friend assured me that he's doing okay, and I've got his phone number now, so I'll check in on him. But yeah, that was one thing because it affects everyone differently. Having to be, having to stay away from people and not engage with people at the threat that you might make them unwell. So that was one of them. Um, I try to think back to these last 2 years, and then what's quite difficult because at the time it felt like it lasted forever, and
Mm.
now when I try to think back to it, it's like I went to sleep and woke up and it was over, and we were back to normal. I was going back to the office,
Yeah.
back to work. But yeah, I mean that would probably be the main one because there were a lot of people struggling, like you said, with their mental health and things like that. So you had to kind of do your best whilst you were also maybe suffering to then try and help other people with their mental health as well. Because the last thing you want to see is your friends get so down that they make arguably the biggest mistake of their life. Coincidentally, because it'll end it. You don't want to see people go through that. You want people to get through it as best as they can and be there on the other side with you as well. So I think the lack of being able to think of anything else back to that period, it'll probably be that. Make sure you check in a bit more because then you can take that with you anyway after this, and and you'll learn to value things a little bit more because you never know when you won't be able to see people who can't do something, whatever. I guess. But I think that's all I can really think of in terms of that. Anything that I've learned. Oh, and also the power of press and good PR.
That's very important. Yes.
Mm,
No, I see what you're saying, man. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very difficult one, right? Because every interaction you have with any person could always be your last interaction with them.
yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's a tough one, when you're going through life and you're just so caught up in the moment and then just like, you don't think about these things often. And sometimes it's overwhelming to think about these things to the point that it
Mm,
becomes detrimental to how you're doing things. But I think there's got to be a fine balance that we can have to maybe just have like a set of standards of like, hey, it doesn't kill you to fucking smile at people and stuff like that. I'm saying this and
mm.
I'm having that dialogue with myself because I can be a fucking asshole sometimes, and I just gotta remind
Mm.
myself, it's like, hey, calm down, like it's like I got to remind myself the people don't fucking have it in for me or whatever, and it's like I get told
Mm.
this by people close to me sometimes, and then usually I'm kind of an asshole, and then I kind of calm down. I'll be like, yeah, okay, maybe this is fine, and it's just one of them things, perks of living on your own in a foreign country from being 17 years old. But
Yeah.
that's just me. But I think it's yeah, definitely. I think there's got to be a fine line where we can we can still function and we can still live and be present in the moment, do all the things, but also just remember, like this is all temporary and nothing's
Needs
gonna
to be a
last
little bit
forever.
self-aware. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Be
No,
a bit more
I agree.
self-aware.
Yeah, I agree. I think self-awareness is a really big part of that. It's just like to not take yourself too seriously.
Yeah. Mm.
And by that, I don't mean to like look at yourself as a fucking joke. No,
Mm.
not at all. It's in that see the value of what you have to offer, be able to acknowledge that and see it, um, and at the same time have peace with it. Because I think a lot of times people think that they're worth something or that they think they deserve things, but
Mm.
they cling on to it too much, and that's how people become bitter, I think. And that's a
Yeah.
terrible thing to happen to a person, I feel.
Yeah, I definitely think it's don't confuse your self-awareness and your self-confidence with entitlement.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, um, as long as
It's
you work hard and as long as you work hard for something, it will come eventually. Don't think that from the starting gate that you're owed anything.
exactly,
no one's
see.
owed. No one's
Yeah.
owed anything.
Yeah, I never. It's very good that you said that, because to me personally, I don't believe in deserving things, but I do believe in earning them. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's like when people go, "Oh, that should have happened," or "I should have got this," or I got screwed out of this situation," and it's like, no, stop right there. That's a terrible fucking way to think about anything, because
Mm.
that's only gonna just hold you back. I think we can round this up nicely to what we were talking about with music, where it's like you do it for the fucking love of it. If you
Yeah.
do music genuinely because you enjoy it and it's for the love of it, then you do it with you don't really have expectations besides the enjoyment that you're going to get out of it, and you have enough confidence in your own abilities and your own consistency and your own devotion that you're going to get what you want out of it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
a couple of no's, or like maybe like 100 ignored emails, shouldn't stop you from wanting to do what you want to do if you really
No,
care about it.
because eventually that one will come, and
Yeah.
then when it happens, you'll know it. When it happens, it happens, and just that's the thing. Like I think you have to kind of instead of like you said earlier, like this should have happened to me, and this should have happened, and blah blah blah. I deserve it. But instead of saying that, why don't you think about like why it didn't?
Hmm.
Because that's obviously what they're not thinking about. They're thinking that they deserve it, but they're not thinking about why it's not happening. If you feel that you deserve it so much, then maybe you need to kind of understand why it's not happened to you yet. And I always say yet because if you figure that out, that means you've
Yeah.
still got a chance to realize that you earn it, and that eventually it will come to you.
Absolutely. I think the yet is very important. And I also think that sometimes as well, the reason could be completely bullshit. But I
Mm,
think that's also when it's important that whatever it is, you figure it out and you still carry on. If you've got some lesson to learn from that, then fair enough. That could be very, very helpful. I mean, for me
yeah.
personally, um, I would dare say, I mean, the second Trivax album isn't out yet. We've not actually put out a release date for it yet, but I'm sure
Hmm.
people will see something at some point in the near future. But
Hmm.
in regards to that, my whole approach has just entirely changed in how I do music and how I do almost anything in life. Like, I've had to rewire my own fucking brain. And a lot of this actually is a result of a few extremely disappointing experiences that I had in Trivax. You know,
Mm,
I mean, for me, I've not talked about this a lot actually, but I think you'll probably appreciate this a little bit considering what you just said
yeah.
about your first album. But for me, our first album, Sin, was an extremely special thing, and I put my heart and soul into writing those songs. Okay, those songs meant a lot to me. Some of them still do, but to me at the time, the way I looked at it was just like, well, fuck, this is my life's legacy. I might even fucking top myself after I released this album. And
All right.
which I'm glad I did, and wasn't the album that was worth doing that for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's still a good album, I think. But what happened with that? Literally, I have this horrible memory of the release day. All right, we released it on 13th of November,
Hmm.
2016. And fucking hell, man, it sold 2 copies on that day. And I think, I feel like that was one of the lowest points in my life, was that day when we released our debut album. And obviously it didn't, like, that's how it started. Literally within less than 2 years from that, like, we sold out all of the copies, and then we were playing Bloodstock, and we were
Yeah.
going around everywhere, but it was just that initial thing was like, oh man, that fucking
That
sucks.
stings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
like, I
stinger.
mean, I mean, it was bad. I won't go into too much details, but it's really fucking bad. But the thing of that was the point I'm trying to make, and why I even bring that up. Because of that experience and a few others along the way, I fucking shifted my perspective completely, because it's almost like a survival mechanism. It's like,
Mm,
yes, I may feel that way about the music, but what can I do to sort of make this work, but also make it more tangible? And also, what kind of a mindset can I adapt, which makes it easier to survive through these kind of experiences? And as a
Yeah.
result of that, I've pretty much changed everything, you know, like even the whole thing of like me going to the gym and doing like fitness transformations and all that stuff. I mean, that's there for people to check out if they haven't already. But that whole thing, a lot of the ignition comes from those kind of failures with Trivax, because
Hmm.
it's the fucking chip on my shoulder. It's like, fucking hell, man, you know, this is I'm not just gonna leave with this. You know, this
No.
is all this is done is now make me want to push to an extent that it's like, even if you give me the world, it's not going to be enough now, you know. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes I feel like those challenging experiences are necessary for us to actually unlock our own potential. You know, it's kind of like what doesn't kill you makes you
Yeah.
stronger, I think.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing as well. Like, try and try again. Like, if you fail the first time, do it again. You get it right. Even if
Yeah.
you have to take a if you maybe have to take a step back and reassess the way you're doing it, do it again.
Hmm.
And eventually it'll work. There's too many. There are a fair too many people who give up, and you can put that into bands as like this. Was once again, we're going full circle to the thing about the repulsive splitting. Um, you
Hmm.
know, there are too many people that give up because they don't get it the first try. Keep trying, try again, and eventually it'll come. It'll happen. Just have to keep persevering. Persevering. Good word.
That's right. Yeah. Perseverance. I think that's very important, man, you know, and just keep fucking pushing. And even when you make it, that's only when you got to do even more work. It's not
Mm,
like there's a pinnacle point that you reach in terms of success, whatever the fuck success is, you know,
yeah.
or even, you know, like you earlier you mentioned like when the band gets big, it's like, what the fuck is big? What does that
Mm,
exactly mean? Like statistically, does that mean you have like 10,000 followers on Instagram, or is it a million, or is it 5 million? Like, how does that work? Because that is such a thing that's entirely down to perspective, isn't it? You know, so
yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it's like, well, what is your goal? You know what I mean? Because it's like, you could think of it like this, right? We've just been to Bloodstock, you know, obviously we keep talking about the festival, but that's what,
Mm.
22,000 people?
Yeah, somewhere around that margin.
Okay. Well, think of it like this, right? And this is not a dig, by the way, and obviously it's different
Hmm.
experiences, but I'm purely just talking about the numbers of people attending, just to make a case for the whole idea of the scales, right?
Yeah,
22,000 people, um, 4 days, lots and like dozens and dozens of bands, really big ones, legendary bands, right?
yeah.
22,000 people. Rammstein does that with one gig. Do you get what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Right? You want to talk about the scales, like what is being in a big band? And majority of the bands that were playing Bloodstock, me and you would look at them and think, oh yeah, they're actually quite a big band. You know, they're quite well known. You know, and this is that. If
Yeah.
if you got like a, I don't know, like a support gig with them, you'd be like, oh fuck, what a great opportunity. But that's just the perspective, right? And that's not to take away from anyone's accomplishments at all, but it's just like a little reminder that, hey, there's big and then there's big. Maybe the
Yeah.
focus
Yeah.
should be on just getting recognized for your work and creating enjoyment first and foremost for yourself and your brothers, and then afterwards for people. And then if that
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
heard, and then if that gets big or whatever that is, then that's great. But big should never serve as a ceiling, I don't think. And that's
No,
just the way I
and you
personally look
also
at it.
set yourself. It's like the whole subgenre thing, like putting yourself in a box on it. You set yourself a target, and at that point, if you don't know what happens after that target, then you won't know what to do from there. You don't know what comes after that. So,
Yeah.
never sit there and be like, well, I want to be here. And if you don't know what's after here,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to get to here and have no fucking clue what to do. You know, it's better to be like, you know, here would be great, here would be great, but you know what? I'll get there eventually, and there eventually, and up there eventually. You know, it's always good to have goals. You know, fantastic, but you know, like he said, you know, make sure it's cool for you and the people you're doing it with, and you won't even notice that people start to give it recognition until it starts happening, and you start kind of go like, oh, hang on. That's I mean that's from my sort of experience anyway, from at least straight after the first album. Like it would took the label to tell us like the where it sold, and I was a bit like, oh, that you know, I'd be happy if it sells like well in the UK, and then after that, I'm being told, well, you know, you sold in Japan and Australia and America, and they start listing off the countries, and I'm like, okay, all
Yeah.
right, that's you know, that's quite a reach for stuff, which you know, I
Yeah,
never
that's
would have
always
even
cool.
fathomed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always cool when it first kind of happens, because it's like,
Mm,
you know, it like I said, you know, it's one of the it's the perspective. But I remember, like, for us, I'm going back a little while now, not too long, but I
mm,
remember when we first started selling CDs and shit to like America and all these different, like you said, Australia and all these
yeah.
places. I was like, what the fuck, you know, like, who's listening to us from there? You know, but then you do kind of get a little accustomed to it after a while. Obviously, always ever so grateful for every single bit of support that comes through.
Mm,
But there is that little bit of a thing. I had a weird fucking habit of like, this is how much free time I used to have back then, by the way. But when we first
mm,
started our Bandcamp page, you know, and we had t-shirt orders, you know, this is when we still only had like one design, and it was our old logo, you know, which we've not
yeah.
used in ages now. Uh, I remember when I would get orders, I would like look up. I don't know if this is a really weird fucking thing that I used to do back then. I was a weird person. Maybe still am a little. I used to take people's addresses and put it on Google Maps and then go on the streets just to see what their house looked like.
You know what? Someone who's ordered a shirt is watching this now, going like, "He's done what?"
I know where you
Looking
live.
out the window, going like, "There's the Google car."
No, but it was like, I don't know why I did that. It was just like a point of curiosity. It's like, oh fuck, you know, because it's that personal relationship you've got with your music as well, you know. So it's like when
Mm,
someone else, obviously, eventually over time, you gotta learn to kind of have boundaries as well. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Uh, I mean,
I,
now
I I didn't.
I'm
Sorry.
kind of like on the opposite side of it now, where I feel funny about putting a fucking return address on there, you know. So sometimes I don't even direct it to myself, you know. So I've kind of
uh,
I've done a bit of a fucking 180 on that. But it's just,
yeah.
you know, when you're so attached to your music, you know, and it fucking means so much to you, that when someone somewhere else like buys it, you know, it's almost like, fuck yeah, you know, like I don't know. It's a really hard thing to explain. It's such a fucking virgin mindset, but it's you know, there is that kind of purity to it, you know, that it's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
you care a lot about this, you know, so the fact that someone is supporting it, like, that means the fucking world. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So you want to see where the fuck they live.
it's all I used to do was look up the cities. Like, there's a country I know, but I didn't know what the city was. I'd look up the city. I wouldn't look up their exact address.
Yeah, no, but you can do that with Google, you know, unless they're. We had some orders from like Lebanon a few years ago, I remember, and
Mm.
I couldn't find that one because I found it, but there was just no Street View. That's all. So
Oh, right.
yeah, it's one of them things. I haven't done that in quite a few years, but for some reason it just reminded me. Um, yeah, you know what? I had this conversation with someone actually. I can't remember who it was. One of our friends, anyway. I think I was talking to her, and I was gonna give her my address for something, or I was gonna send her something, and all of that, or she was gonna send me something. My
Mm.
memory fails me. It's usually good, but I can't remember what this was. And she was. I said to her, I said, whatever you do, just don't look at where I live on Google. And she was like, why the fuck would I do that? And I was like, oh, I thought everyone did that because when we used to sell merch on fucking Bandcamp 5, 6 years ago, used to look up people's houses. She was like, no, that's so fucking weird. Why would you do that? So I was like, okay, maybe it's just me.
Even your friends there going like,
I do have. Listen,
what?
I know I'm not normal. Like I have very like unusual things here and there. Like I'm very functional in a social environment and around people. Like super functional with that. No problem. I'm not a shy person. But I think I do definitely. It's all a skill based thing which I've developed over time. I think on the
Mm,
inside, I'm definitely not sort of cut out the same as most people. There's a
mm.
thing like I've got with birthdays. I remember everyone's birthdays. Look, it's fucking, like
Yeah, that's
like
a good skill to
I
have.
think so. Yeah, for girlfriends, it's a great skill to have, but sometimes it kind of kills the anticipation. It's like Christmas. It's like fucking people putting up decorations now in August is kind of a little bit like that.
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, it is what it is. But listen, man,
Mm.
it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really did enjoy our chat, and it's really
Thank you very
fucking
much,
good to
man.
see Devastator going out there. I mean, you have been going out there, but now it's kind of like, when the shovel finally hits the tip of the treasure chest, it's kind of like
Yes.
that kind of a thing, I feel. So that's really good, man. Is there anything you want to let people know? If you want them to come check anything out in particular, if there's anything you want them to be looking out for, that's all.
Cool. Yeah. You can catch us on all the streaming services if you're that way inclined to. Spotify, your iTunes, and all that stuff. If iTunes is still a thing. Apple Music. Um, yeah, you can just look for the Goat and the Devastator. I know there's a couple of Devastators. It's not the most original name. But look for the Goat. You can check us out on Bandcamp, Devastator Black Thrash UK.bandcamp.com. And
You missed the trick
when is
there,
this going out?
man. You
What
missed the
did I miss,
trick.
man?
You're a black thrash band. Don't tell people to go to streaming services. Tell them to go buy your fucking bootleg tapes or something from fucking drug dealers on the streets of New Mexico. That's what you need to be doing.
Hey, hey, look,
But
man.
yeah,
If New Mexican drug dealers are selling my tapes on the streets, more power to them.
all right, that's
But
good. Yeah.
when's this going out? Because I can plug gigs.
You can plug gigs. Oh, let me have a look. We've got something coming up together as well, which
Mm,
we've
mm.
not even touched on that at all. We we,
Nope,
we did we did
nope.
well. But now
This is
comes
as
the
close as it's
cocktease.
getting.
Yeah, I think this will be coming out on the week commencing the 29th of August, so next week basically.
Cool. Right. So I won't plug Exciter because that's the day before.
That's right.
um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. If you're in the Nottingham area, we're playing with Hell Ripper at the Old Soul, and this would be
Right.
the most intimate Hell Ripper show since the Damnation Festival one. Because if you've been to the Old Soul, tiny. So going to that. Tickets are still available now through Torturous Promotions. Um, and then after that, we go and do the Operation Hellstrike 2, where we're going to play in Cardiff on October 21st and Birmingham on October 22nd, little mini weekend. And one more show in November, which is Frashchester. It's a festival. The exact date escapes me, but check out our social medias. Devastator Black Rush. No, sorry, Devastator UK on the socials. And then there'll be one more to talk about, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, there might be something else happening between Trivax and Devastator. But yeah, people, yeah, hush hush. People need to keep an eye out for that one. Yeah. Well, fantastic, Tom. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, and
Thanks for
I
having me,
wish you
man.
all the best, man. To everyone else
Right.
listening to the show, thank you all. If you've made it this far, I hope you guys have enjoyed the conversation, man. It's been a fucking good one. And be sure to check out Tom's band Devastator and see what the fuck they got coming up. And yeah, thank you all for sticking around. I'll see you guys at the next episode of Iblis Manifestations. Bye bye.